Many thanks for watching Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be discussing Egypt's foreign policy, and more than one important event and important dimension taking place will be shedding more light on enhancing and promoting Egypt's relations with the entire world. As we know that lots of international visits and exchanges were made by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. This led, of course, to a sense of activation of Egypt's international relations with all the regional and the international powers. The President has made 138 foreign visits over the past 8 years, during which that he had reiterated Egypt's policy in a sense of partnership and mutual respect with the world countries, enhancing consultations with all the world leaders with the main aim of coordinating stances vis-à-vis all files of common interest. During the different visits of the President, he is keen on discussing regional and international developments, explaining Egypt's vision regarding regional and international affairs as well. And I do have with me a very distinctive panel for discussing the important and developmental issues that has happened in the visits of the President recently. I have all the honor, ladies, first to have with us Dr. Vivian Morcos, our political analyst for tonight. Thank you, Dr. Morcos.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here.
Pleasure is mine, dear. And we are really honored to have with us also Dr. Sherif Amir, Professor of International Relations. Dr. Amir, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Well, together we'll be reading the international news and more in the news. But before delving more into Egypt's relations with the entire world, the visits by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and more the latest concerning the top story of the day was earlier His Excellency the President received Mauritania's Defense Minister Lieutenant General Hanan Wild al-Ghazouani at the Presidential Palace on Wednesday. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said that during the meeting the President received a message from his Mauritanian counterpart that asserted his keenness on boosting bilateral relations. The President expressed Egypt's appreciation for its relations with Mauritania and stressed the significance of fostering consultation and coordination over issues of mutual concern. The head of state also expressed the desire to push forward cooperation between the two countries in the various domains, especially the military and the security fields. For his part, the Mauritanian official said that his country was looking forward to expanding bilateral relations in the coming period. Well, we have more on tonight's episode and our coverage, special coverage of Egypt's foreign policy. As I said, the President made 138 foreign visits over the past 8 years, very fruitful visits that did actually yield positive repercussions on more than one level, also on the international level. And we'll be reading with our dear guests more concerning this important topic and shedding more light on Egypt's foreign policy. We'll see this report and we'll be back.
Egyptian diplomacy has experienced throughout the decades of sincere work in serving our beloved nation moments of decisive decisions and also moments of glory and joy. Cairo and its many missions has served as a bridge between our world at home and the world abroad in coordination with other government agencies, and as an outspoken voice of Egypt in the forums of international organizations and decision-making centers in world capitals. Over recent decades, Egyptian diplomacy has also contributed to laying the foundations for international and regional stability. This, in turn, testifies to Egypt's foreign policy outlook, which aims to pursue all available avenues towards the realization of peace, security, and prosperity for all nations and peoples. Egypt has consistently been a force for stability regionally. Towards this end, it has engaged a balanced and ethical approach that rises above pettiness and opportunistic games in order to calm hotspots, diffuse crises, and lay the foundations for peace. This history clearly reflects a number of other important points. First, Egyptian diplomacy shows no lenience when it comes to Egypt's rights. It accepts no halfway solutions, and it does not despair in the face of others' intransigencies and evasiveness or the indifference of the international community. It will persist in its efforts to restore those rights head held high while exercising the necessary forbearance out of a belief in the justice of its causes and armed with the awareness of its political leadership and the solidarity of the domestic front. Second, Egypt's foreign policy adheres to consistent parameters that are based on the principles of diversifying its axes of movement, mutual respect and parity, non-intervention in the domestic affairs of other nations, and respect for its sovereignty and autonomous political will. Third, during the past decades, Egyptian diplomacy has succeeded in accumulating a vast and growing reservoir of practical expertise in the diverse fields of diplomatic work in both its bilateral and multilateral dimensions, and in its various specialized frameworks such as economic and development diplomacy or environment and climate change diplomacy. Fourth, geographical and historical needs and considerations have determined the main spheres of action for the Egyptian foreign policy. The main ones are the Arab and African spheres, as they are natural geopolitical extensions of Egypt and accordingly essential components of its national security framework. Egypt's concern for these two spheres is epitomized by the pioneering role it played in their national liberation movements and the limitless economic, political and moral support it gave to its Arab and African brothers in their struggles for self-determination. Other salient manifestations of this concern are to be found in Egypt's hosting of the Arab League, its contribution to the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, and its efforts to strengthen the efficacy of these regional organizations and the central role they and their subsidiary bodies play in reinforcing the bonds of Arab and African cooperation and integration. More recently, Egypt launched its Mediterranean identity as a component of its foreign policy, promoting this shared identity among the countries along its shores with an eye to transforming the sea into a bond that draws on the long cultural, civilizational links between its peoples and on the diverse political economic strengths of their countries, as opposed to a barrier to waves of political and cultural communication and exchange. Egyptian diplomacy has been active in diverse areas of international interplay to the east and west, strengthening its strategic partnerships with all major and emergent powers across the globe, as it continues to build its diversified and growing network of relations. The central purpose of this effort is to maximize Egypt's interests with the key players in its spheres of activity, whether in North and South America, in Europe, at the bilateral or European Union level, or in Asia, where our foreign ties have grown by leaps and bounds during the past years. Throughout this process, they were fortified in their resolve by their confidence in the awareness of their political leadership and the sincerity of its intent to rebuild their state on solid national foundations. The new republic is now reaping the fruits of these efforts, giving shape and direction to the nation's comprehensive strengths, redefining its essential elements and orienting them towards the realization of sustainable development and prosperity. Towards these ends, the political leadership has set in motion a nationwide process of comprehensive achievements which all Egyptians can be proud of, in order to create a better future for the coming generations and to ensure a dignified life for all Egyptians without discrimination.
Well, delving more into our topic for tonight and talking our foreign relations with the entire world, Dr. Morcos, you're living in London, and from the eyes of an Egyptian expat, definitely this gives you like some sort of a panoramic view of the Egyptian foreign policy, visits of the president to the entire world. Definitely reflects that we are before fostering our relations with the whole world away from the traditional policies that were before. And we're talking regional and international issues, of course.
First of all, when President Sisi came with a very special plan in mind to restore the relation with all the African countries. So this was one of the most important steps that he took back. To take back all the relations that were neglected for a long time. It's true there were representation all over Africa, but no activities really were felt at that time. So this was one of the very, very important first steps that he took to restoration of the foreign African policy and putting the right ambassadors in the right places, and a lot of activities, a lot of work have been done by Egyptian firms in all over Africa.
Yeah.
And we've seen recently the Tanzanian dam that was offered by Egypt to Tanzania, and which cost a lot of money as a contribution to the development of Africa. This is a very, very revealing to what extent the Egyptian president wants to help all the African countries develop to the highest standard, and all the plans of connecting all Africa by road, by train, by River Nile. Now it's the new connection through the River Nile, so all the African countries can activate the trade inter-African and to the Mediterranean Sea.
Yes.
So this was the first remarkable step that he took for Africa. Of course, he's been attending a lot of important meetings all over the United States, all over so many countries, but with the stress of on Africa, of course.
Yes.
And many times. So that's not something to neglect, because he's approaching all the African needs together, which is important for going forward with the whole world and being at the same standard.
Yes, a very important point, Dr. Vivian, and Egypt's relations, restoring Egypt's relations and fostering Egypt's relations with the entire world. Professor Amir, we're talking, yes, of course, Africa, and while mentioning Africa, of course, Egypt has took great strides also since our chairmanship of the African Union. That has been a very fruitful year for the country. And from Africa to the latest visits also, we've seen the foreign minister, of course, to one-on-one meeting with the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, and we've seen also U.S. Secretary Blinken here in Cairo. So we have this sense of shuttle diplomacy and dynamism. How do you see this sense of shuttle diplomacy, what it adds in a very timely visits that we really witness?
Well, first of all, it's a great honor to be in your presence and the presence of Mrs. Morcos. Well, look, we learned in the law school and also in your field in journalism about the notion of international community.
Yeah. And
we discovered through these recent years that we lived a big lie, a huge lie. Why? We used to hear about the international community condemning, imposing sanctions, acting so and so and so. And the reference was only the Western Bloc, means the United States and Europe. What about Egypt? What about India? What about Azerbaijan, Armenia?
Right.
What about Mauritania, who came today? Africa, South America, and all the Asian countries, China. So I think that we are telling the world, no, we have to redefine the notion of international community. The international community now is multipolar. Maybe it's like what the Russians are saying now. We need many forces, not one or two bipolar forces. So I think that President Sisi is one of the leaders who's promoting this idea, that we are working together. You cannot impose at any country to work with one side. We meet Secretary of State Blinken the next day with Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia. We met with Joe Biden, the US President in Saudi Arabia, and the Arab Summit. The next day was Xi Jinping of China.
Yes, exactly.
So this is the new notion.
Opening up to the whole world.
Of course. And I think that our friends in Washington and friends in Brussels, I mean the EU, should understand that the world is changing, that the African voice now is very powerful.
Yes.
It could change a lot.
Yes, the African voice is very powerful and it could change a lot. And you've worked a lot with Africa, Dr. Vivian, and I guess that after this important and fruitful year of Egypt and our chairmanship of the African Union, it did yield fruits. So I had all the honor of interviewing the Dean of African Ambassadors, Ambassador Labarang, and he told me that we're really happy that with Egypt's presence and with Egypt's, weight, and we are back. Egypt is back to Africa, and Africa is back to Egypt. So we can also see more concerning the business and the trade deals that are inked on the sidelines. So today the sense of partnership is not only political but economic as well.
Exactly, exactly. The African countries look upon our Egypt as the motherland of all Africa. And of course, when you have a president who cares about the well-being of Africa and the well-being of the presidents of Africa, he gathered them at so many occasions in Egypt, in the resorts of Egypt, to welcome them as a very brotherly feeling and to share with them all the plans that they want to have together, the plans.
The aura, yeah.
Yeah, the aura, and a lot of activities are going on from Egyptian firms in Africa now. A lot of them, everywhere in Africa. You go and you find roads, you find bridges, you find the Egyptian workmanship. Infrastructure is wonderful, and even on the medical level, they opened a center for liver transplant in Ivory Coast, made by Egyptian professors, specialists in liver transplant. And it's supposed to go all over the other countries as well. And this is very important because Africa knows that they have many resources. They are the resources for the future, and there are a lot of resources that were not fully used and exploited yet. And they're very happy to have the plan for that with Egypt and all the other partners of Africa.
Yes.
And of course, all the roads that they are building and all the communication contribution, of course. Yeah, and the electricity plan for the dams, and all these are the perfect plan for taking Africa somewhere else.
Yes. Shukri asserted, Dr. Amir, that Egypt will continue in order to see vis-à-vis eye to eye with all our partners to find a political solution for the crisis in Ukraine. And Foreign Minister Lavrov also, in his meeting with Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri, our top diplomat, he had affirmed the fact and also assessed that, praised, let me say, Egypt's balanced stance vis-à-vis the crisis. How do you see Egypt's role in meddling in this conflict, and definitely with its heavyweight and with our balanced foreign policy, the result, or we can achieve fruitful results in that file also?
Well, there is two main points in this issue. The first one, we heard from Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Mr. Lavrov, yesterday. He said, when I met my counterpart, Egyptian counterpart, Mr. Sameh Shoukry, he gave me the message of Secretary of State Blinken. There was a message told. So there is something very positive in that. First of all, that there is messages between Washington and Moscow. The second point, which is we are proud of it, it's through Egypt.
Yes.
So they trust Cairo as a mediator. And the message was clear, Russia has to stop the war and then everything would be all right. And of course we all know that in order the war should stop, and that's what we said it before, no one should fuel the battlefield with tanks or other arms in both sides. So I'm saying that Egypt had a role in transmitting its position of balance, that first of all we have to stop the devastating and deteriorating situation of the civilians, whether on the Russian part or in Ukraine. The second point is that we are very balanced in our position because we are the hub of the energy. We're not acting alone. We have our brothers in the Gulf states. We're working together. And we made it clear. We would not reduce the oil production. We would not stop the gas from working with our friends in Russia. I remember at the beginning of the conflict, President Duda, was the president of Poland, came to Egypt. And they thought that maybe influencing Egypt's position would be a positive step. And President Sisi made it clear. We have an independent, sovereign decision. We have excellent relations with Washington and excellent relations with Moscow. If we would take parts, this will fuel the conflict and will be endless. And this is not what we want to hear. What we want to see, what took place yesterday here in Cairo, meeting between the U.S. Secretary of State and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sameh Shoukry, and the next day, Foreign Affairs Minister Lavrov with Sameh Shoukry. This is the message that we want to give the reward. By the way, if we will tackle also the question of mediations, don't forget that President Sisi is the only one who made a shuttle visit between Baku and Yerevan, between Azerbaijan and Armenia, both at war. And he went to both countries, and this is also for keeping the calm and the peace. Why? Because we are in one world. We cannot separate what's happening in Central Asia or in the Middle East or in Europe. So we have to work together.
Yes, we're working together, and actually this is the secret of our success, this sense of coordination. We've seen the sense of shuttle diplomacy, and during the presidential visits, the president is also very keen to tell them more also, Dr. Vivian, about the Egyptian experience, to tell them more about the components of the new republic, let me put it this way, to show the world how Egypt has changed and what is happening on solid grounds, the different developmental projects in the country. This is also very important because this will definitely play a very important role in reinvigorating foreign direct investment.
Of course, any country in the world, the sustainable development can happen through infrastructure and building industries and building all the facilities that promotes this development. So President Sisi didn't spare any idea or any amount of money in the direction of the sustainable development of the whole country. In the same time, he's been building houses in order to improve the life of people. The Decent Life Initiative. He's been building roads in the same time. He's been building industries. He's been building a new way of irrigation. He's been tackling all the problems of the country in order to head for this development and to have a sustainable development. And putting and bearing in mind that these are the model for all the African countries and for the whole world. Because if we look around in the whole world, you cannot imagine that any country in the world has done half the projects that were done on the Egyptian land.
Yes.
No country has done all that. And this takes a lot of money, of course, and it's beneficial for us. First step, because a lot of youth are working in these projects. Everybody's working, plumbing, electricity, building, irrigation, engineers, bankers. Everybody is working and earning money to maintain a certain level of decent life and development. So he's been doing things, and everybody wants to imitate us, because I know that Senegal have been doing a solar plant in a certain district. Like Penpan here. So we are a model for all these countries and the world as well, because the world countries as well can be jealous, because we are doing much more than any other country in such a short time. And this can make people jealous, but he has a big dream for the country and for the whole world, because he works for the peace, for the peace of the whole world, and he tries to put everybody together and he doesn't mind sharing his ideas and sharing his projects with a lot of people in order to go in this direction of the development for the whole world.
Yes.
And it's beneficial for the whole world.
Yes. Taking from Dr. Vivian's words and how Egypt is working for peace and stability, and I guess that one of the main core issues and one of the main core files is trying, of course, to bring calm to the region and settlement for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And Egypt had a very important and a great role to play in that respect, Professor Amir.
Well, we have seen recently in the past few days the escalations in Jerusalem.
Yes, the escalation.
And we have seen how the Israeli government was formed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is a right-wing, an icon of the right wing, and Mr. Smotrich also, who was a disciple of Meir Kahane, the late Meir Kahane. So we know that now the government of Israel is an ultra-nationalist government. And I think that it will be very tough now to negotiate with everyone there, because we all know that the position of the Palestinians has been weakened since there was this division between Gaza and Ramallah. Egypt's role, first of all, is to urge the Palestinians to reunite, because as long as there is the Gaza Strip and there is the Jihad Islami and Hamas acting, it's always an excuse for Israel. And this is one of the facts that brought Benjamin Netanyahu back to power with all these icons. So I think that Egypt is always acting as not only the mediators, but the guarantor of peace.
Peace and stability, the cornerstone.
And the cornerstone. And we are coordinating with His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan, because we all know one of the plans of this government in Israel is the confederation, means that there will be no two-state solution, but one-state solution inside the territories of Jordan. And this is called the transformation, that they will transfer, the transfer of, and they will take some parts of the Negev to Jordan. So I think that we are protecting the sovereignty also of Jordan. And we know that King Abdullah is the sovereign also over the holy places in Jerusalem. So we have to show the Israelis that we are urging peace, urging for peace and security, but that does not mean that we will stand still. We have our friends in the Emirates who have also good relations with the Israelis, and we could tell them clearly, you wish to have relations with the Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, you have to show positive signs.
Right. Definitely more than one important file that Egypt is working on, and more achievements for the Egyptian leadership and the foreign policy, introducing a multidimensional foreign policy, taking steps away from the traditional policies that were before. This is what we have seen in the past 8 years. The upcoming report is highlighting, in light of our keenness to boost foreign relations, Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri met with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow, a very important meeting and a significant one that comes timely. Let us see and watch together more about the highlights of the visit.
In light of Egypt's keenness to boost foreign relations, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry met on Tuesday Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. The meeting with the Foreign Minister Lavrov focused on a common goal of developing the two countries' relations at all levels for the best interests of the two peoples and achieving economic growth. At a joint press conference with Lavrov after talks covered bilateral relations, ways of increasing volume of trade exchange, and the importance to maintain and expand such exchange of commodities. Shoukry also noted that talks covered the regional and international conditions of joint interest, asserting that Egypt, along with the whole international community, are deeply willing to see an end to military confrontations with Ukraine. On Monday, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken at Al Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace in Cairo. During the meeting, President el-Sisi discussed a host of regional and international issues, as well as bilateral relations with U.S. Secretary of State on the first leg of his three-day Middle East trip. Blinken told President el-Sisi that Washington relies on close coordination with the Egyptian presidency to restore stability and achieve calm between the Palestinian and Israeli sides. The president welcomed the U.S. Secretary and conveyed his greetings to President Joe Biden, confirming the strategic bilateral relations between the two countries with wishes to strengthen coordination and negotiation in the political, regional and security issues. El-Sisi stated to Blinken that the latest developments confirm the importance of immediate responses and work in both the political and security track to calm the situation. The Egyptian president also stressed the need for both sides to refrain from unilateral measures. El-Sisi underlined to the U.S. Secretary of State Egypt's constant stance on the need to reach a comprehensive and fair solution that guarantees the rights of the Palestinian people according to international laws in a manner that solves the conflict to allow peace, stability, cooperation and growth. Last week, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi wrapped up a historical visit to India, Azerbaijan and to Armenia. President el-Sisi's tour affirms Egypt's interest on promoting bilateral ties with those countries in a way that realizes a quantum leap in cooperation in various fields. El-Sisi also expressed Egypt's keenness on propelling bilateral ties in the various economic, trade and cultural domains and building on what had been achieved over the past years. The President also underscored the necessity of enhancing trade exchange and bolstering economic partnerships with these countries' private sectors via the formation of a joint businessman council. President el-Sisi underlined during his visits the special historical ties between Egypt and India, Azerbaijan and Armenia, especially at the popular level in light of Egypt having long bolstered bilateral ties at the political, economic, cultural and artistic level.
Well, welcome back. The President met with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Cairo. That was at the start of a three-day tour that took him to the Palestinian territories and Israel. Blinken told President el-Sisi that Washington relies on close coordination with the Egyptian presidency to restore stability and achieve calm in the region. And this is what we were discussing, my humble self and Professor Sherif Amir, concerning Egypt's key and pivotal role in the region, the importance of working on that track, Dr. Amir, bringing stability and calm. What other parties are we coordinating with? Of course, the Gulf also. We're coordinating with the Gulf on another front. This in addition to how you wisely highlighted the sense of partnership with Jordan in that respect.
We are coordinating, of course, with countries like China and India.
Yeah.
And of course, let's not forget the last visit of President Sisi during the independence festivities in India. I think that we are we are not afraid anymore of telling our friends in the West that we are acting now in a sovereign way after the revolution of June the 30th, and Egypt chose its democratic path, that we have to work with other countries economically. We are working with the BRICS group. We are trying to have our own investment with these countries, whether it will be a competition between other countries, the West and East, inside Egypt. Why not, if it will bring us monetary stability? I hope that our friends in Europe also will break this and act also in a way of cooperating with all the region, not imposing these sanctions and separations and this way of rigid diplomacy. I think that the president, when he went to China, for example, he met with the President Xi Jinping. We highlighted the importance of investment in Egypt in the sector of the Suez Canal. We are telling also our friends in India, come and invest in Egypt because we are the most stable country. The Europeans, they all know now that the only stable country in this region is Egypt. Even their partner in NATO, which is Turkey, is not at the standard anymore. We didn't blackmail them with the immigration. We didn't use any of these cards. On the contrary, President Sisi gave his word that if you find a solution in Libya, you will find stability in Europe. And this is what took place. We maintained stability in Libya, and they are thankful for our action. No one would have imagined that Egypt would play such a role in such a heated zone like Libya by imposing a red line and telling everyone you should stop and negotiate right now. So we brought stability in Libya. We brought stability in South Sudan. There was a huge war there in this newborn country. President Sisi was the only president who went to Abuja there, and he met with Salva Kiir, and they signed a peace treaty under our mediation. So we are trying to show the world that we are contributor of peace. We are strong in our military, of course, but in the same time, our diplomacy is for stability and security.
Yes, definitely. And Dr. Vivian, India, Azerbaijan, and Armenia are definitely important stops also in the presidential tour. For his trip to Azerbaijan and Armenia, the first for an Egyptian president since the two countries gained independence from the former Soviet Union. That was back in 1991. So very important and timely visits. Even the choice, of course, of the countries reflects the need for a shift in focus also in our foreign relations in favor of going east as well. So how do you see the significance of those latest visits by the president? And of course, the honor of His Excellency being the chief guest at the Republic Day of India celebrations. Very meaningful.
Of course, it's meaningful. Just to start with, two great civilizations. We are two great civilizations, India and Egypt. And when you meet, of course, it's apotheotic, it's great, and especially in that day, well chosen. It means a lot. It means that we share with you your independence, you share our independence, we have to live always independent. That's very important, and no one wants a war in the world now. Even if those who impose war, but the whole world, the youth want to live a peaceful life. And India is a great population. One of the biggest population of the world, one of the biggest traders in the world. And the exchange that President Sisi did with the President of India, the wheat against exchange without paying any money, that was a great idea to solve the problem of the wheat problem that has been created by the Ukrainian war, because we are the biggest country importer of wheat, and that's a very intelligent move to do that. And proposing the Suez Canal region for investment for the Indian millionaires that are going to come and do something. So that's important. And Azerbaijan They came many times, and I think you visited Kazakhstan.
Yes,
not
Kazakhstan.
Yeah, and Armenia, of course. It's got a lot of meaning for other regions, for other reasons, for other countries.
I had all the honor of interviewing His Excellency, the Armenian President.
Exactly.
When he was attending COP27. And they are really friendly, very friendly people.
Everybody loves Egypt.
Yes.
And everybody is admiring
our
Sisi.
civilization.
And our president.
And
he is doing a great job.
And his leadership.
His leadership and wisdom. He's very wise, and it's very important in this time of turbulence in the world. You can very easily lose it and create a big trouble all over the region, and he's not.
Yes. Wrapping up, Dr. Amir, I guess that we are going to go right away in a couple of minutes to the top stories. Those important visits, the three stops of the President, India, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, and holding also meetings on the other side with the business community in those countries. We've seen the military contingent of Egypt in a very remarkable sense of partnership, also sharing in the Republic Day. So we had stories of success out of this important tour.
It's significant because it shows the whole world that Egypt is working around the clock to work with all the partners. We are not anymore Egypt in the last decades just centered between Europe and the United States. We are everywhere now. We're talking to everyone. We are asking for cooperation in a world that has no sense of cooperation anymore that we're living now. So you have to have a bright voice of hope, and this voice is the voice of President Sisi. When he goes, for example, to Azerbaijan and Armenia, as I said, the two countries are in war, but he's telling them, no way, we will have to work together. And I'm sure that he
and find a ground, a mutual ground for peace.
Mutual ground for peace. And I'm sure that he opened the subject between both President Aliyev and the President of Armenia, that we have to find a solution for this endless conflict. So I'm very hopeful that with the leadership now in Egypt, Egypt will make a huge change, starting from the Middle East, of course, which is the hub and the most difficult part in the world, and then in the contribution of finding a solution for the Ukrainian-Russian war, and hopefully for the investment here afterwards.
Yes, I thank you so much, Professor Amir, for this optimistic note. I thank so much Dr. Vivian Morcos, our political analyst for tonight, and an Egyptian expat, a bright image that we are really proud of. And I thank so much Professor Dr. Sherif Amir, Professor of International Relations. Dr. Amir, thank you so much. Dr. Vivian, always an honor. And I thank you to your viewers for joining us. And that was Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching.